Hey everyone, it's Smarty Pants Chess here again, and today we're going to go through another CCC11 finals game between Stockfish and Leela. In this game, it's Stockfish playing white, Leela is playing black. And I also did a quick vote, so we're going to be using the Lee chessboard today, so I'm going to try and do analysis with this as well. And for now I'm going to leave the engine evaluation in, and just let me know if you want that in or not, but it could be useful. But anyway, the game kicked off with 1d4, knight to f6 from Leela, c4 from Stockfish, c5, d5 and e6. This is the end of the book, and we're into Modern Benoni. Now I used to play the Modern Benoni, and it's quite a defensive opening. And I've seen quite a few computer games use it as well, and black tends to do really badly. And I admit I myself have got terrible results with this opening as well. So it's quite defensive, and the problem is black gets into a bit of trouble trying to develop, I find anyway. But we'll see how this game goes. So black just played e6, hitting out at d5. Stockfish plays knight to c3 to defend and reinforce the pawn. d6 from Leela, and now e4 from Stockfish. So Leela played g6 in the game, but occasionally people have played the move e5 here. I usually play it as well, it kind of blockades the centre. It's quite drawish though, but apparently it gives white the advantage quite heavily. White can continue with knight ge2, bishop e7, a3, a5, knight g3 castles, bishop d3. And the point is, it's going to be very hard for black to develop this white squared bishop on c8. It's not got a lot of squares to go to, because the knight also is struggling for moves. It could potentially go to knight to d7, but then all the pieces are kind of behind this layer of pawns in the centre. It's going to be very difficult for black to develop. So if we just go back to the game, Leela actually played g6, going to fianchetto the bishop. Stockfish continue with bishop to f4. And again, e5 was an option, but I think white can just play bishop to g5. And after h6, just played bishop to e3, knight bd7 and bishop d3. Again, black's really struggling for development. It's going to be very hard to get the c8 bishop out, and the knights are kind of in each other's way for black. In the game, Leela played knight h5, attacking the bishop on f4. The bishop retreats, and Leela plays bishop to g7. Stockfish plays bishop to e2, and basically Stockfish is just eyeing up this knight on h5. But here, Leela takes on c3 first, with bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and white suddenly got double pawns, and Leela shuffles the knight backwards to f6, attacking the pawn on e4 with the knight. So Stockfish reinforces this with f3, and now black does play e5. So they've got rid of their dark square bishop though, and perhaps this could really weaken black's dark squares. So straight away Stockfish sort of exploits this with queen to d2, maybe preparing bishop h6, and for this reason Leela actually plays h6 themselves. If bishop takes h6 by Stockfish, trying to win a pawn, there's actually a little trick, because Leela could actually play knight takes e4, attacking the queen. If f takes e4, then black can play queen h4 with check, and they're attacking the king and attacking the bishop at the same time. So if g3, there's queen takes h6, queen takes, rook takes, and black is in a really nice position. After h4, and this position is slightly better for black. White's got double c-pawns, and black has the open h files to exploit. For instance, they could potentially play the move g5 here, which looks quite nice to me. So if we go back to the game, after h6, Stockfish didn't take this, he actually played bishop to d3 instead. Leela continued with knight b to d7. And again, if white decides to go for bishop takes h6, again there's just knight takes e4 with the same queen check at the end of it, so black can still play queen h4 afterwards. So if we go back to the game, Stockfish actually played h4 here, trying to shut down the king side, and now with this h-pawn on h4, they are threatening to take on h6. So for this reason Leela plays h5. And now everything is kind of blockaded. Stockfish continued developing with knight to h3, queen e7 by Leela, and now bishop g5. So this bishop is now untouchable. Well, I say it's untouchable, Leela actually played knight to f8 in the game, preparing the move knight to h7 to attack the bishop. But you know what I mean, it's got a great outpost for this bishop. There's no piece on the dark square diagonals to attack it, and white's in a relatively strong position. So yeah, Leela just played knight to f8, so Stockfish plays knight to f2. Leela continued, knight h7, attacking the bishop. Stockfish retreats, and Leela plays king to d8. So it looks as though Leela is going to keep their king in the centre, or maybe even try and drive it into the corner this way. And it's white's job now to sort of attack on the other side of the board. So Stockfish castles queenside, Leela develops a final piece, and bishop c2 from Stockfish, stopping any bishop to a4 ideas from black. Bishop to e8 from Leela. It looks like a very unusual move, but actually later in the game she actually starts defending all these pawns quite well with this bishop, so it's quite a useful move. There's not really anywhere else for this bishop to go, because otherwise if it was on d7 it's kind of in the way. Stockfish continued with king b1, so they're going to try and drive their king into the corner for safety. It's probably the only safe square on the board for the king. Knight to d7 from Leela, bishop to b3, f6, king a1. Now Stockfish parks their king in the corner, and Leela hits in with g5. A trade occurs, h takes g, f takes g, and then queen to c1 from Stockfish. So again we see this bishop for Leela does a great job of defending this h5 pawn. So that was part of their plan, just to push g5 and defend everything with this bishop. And Stockfish has their own plan of playing queen c1 and now queen to a3 and trying to exploit some weaknesses on this side of the board. King c7 was played by Leela, and now queen to a3. Now according to the computer, rook d8 is a necessary move right now. But I was thinking of maybe just a6, what's wrong with this move? But apparently white gets into a great game and black gets into a lot of trouble after rook b1. After black plays a normal move like rook c8, white can play queen a5 check. And if they even king b8 and bishop a4, suddenly white's got an amazing attack, because this rook now hits on the b file, and now queen takes a6 is threatened because the b pawn is pinned. So after king to a8, let's say, white can actually crash in with rook takes b7. If king takes b7, they've got rook b1 check, king a7, and now just bishop to c6, and the rook's going to crash in on b7, and black's in a lot of trouble. They can't really defend this. Even if rook b8, there's queen c7 check, rook to b7, and queen takes b7 is checkmate. So in this position it looks as though both sides are quite equal, but black has to be very careful. Like I just said, a6 leads to all sorts of menacing moves for white, and black's in a lot of trouble. So rook d8 was played in the game, and the point is that now once Stockfish takes this pawn off with queen takes a7, which was played, black plays knight to b6. And now black is threatening to play rook to a8 and win the queen. So white has to move it backwards to a3. Leela plays rook a8, and the queen goes to b2 for safety. King to b8 from Leela, and then rook to b1. But actually black's quite safe for the moment anyway. Rook g8 is played, queen to d2, attacking this pawn. But it's defended 3 times by the queen, the knight, and the rook. And there's a lot of play against this pawn now. We see rook a6, knight to d3, king a8, rook to b2. And now we just get a lot of manoeuvring from both sides, and g4 from white. So in this particular position, if black decides to push on, I think white ends up with a good game after knight to f2, knight c8, and then queen to d2. And white's sacking his pawn a few times, and they're going to play knight h3 next move. So white will probably pick up a pawn. So in the game, after g4 was played by Stockfish, I think Leela played the correct move, just h takes g4, f takes g4, and now knight to c8. And now we see an awful lot of manoeuvring from both sides. So bishop d1, rook a7, and now both sides are trying to defend and attack this pawn. So white's attacking it and black's defending it. Bishop f3 was played, and queen f7 attacking the bishop, queen g2 to defend, the queen goes back to defend the pawn, and there's several bits of manoeuvring, so both sides again attacking and defending this pawn. Queen e2, queen f6, knight f2, and knight to f8. So both sides just move the knights around several times. The rook's And okay, so we're getting to a better position here where now white is defending and black is sort of attacking. They managed to create a battery, so Leela's attacking A2, but also white is defending this. So there's nothing of major concern at the moment. And as both sides trundle on to attack this G5 pawn, there's a lot of manoeuvring again, with both sides sort of attacking and counter-attacking. For instance, just then, Stockfish attacked this knight, Leela defended by playing queen to f7, attacking this bishop, but then the bishop retreats back. So it's just a lot of back and forth. Again, Leela defends, Stockfish manoeuvres around, attacking this G5 pawn. And it's a waste of time for me to go through all of these moves because they're not very instructive at all. So I think it's better for me just to show the important parts of each game. So here, finally, knight to G3 is played by Stockfish, and I think knight to F5 is coming soon. Stockfish plays rook H7, and now I feel like white has a grip on the game. So after rook to B3, bishop to G6, Leela attacks this rook, rook goes to H6, bishop to F7, and now knight to F5. And it feels like white's got a grip on the game all of a sudden. This knight on F5 has got a great outpost and really can't be taken. Otherwise I'm sure white will take the G pawn and try and promote to a queen with a passed pawn. Bishop to E8 was played, and now A3, rook A6 to defend D6, and Stockfish plays rook H7 again. The knight goes backwards, the king finally goes up. So the king is defending this A2 pawn. Bishop A4 attacking the rook, rook retreats, bishop goes backwards, again back and forth a few times. Bishop to D2, bishop G6, attacking the rook and the knight, but it just gets retreated backwards. Queen to D7, and now actually white does have the option to play bishop takes G5 here, but this is actually a blunder because Leela's got a surprise. Rook takes A3 with check. If the king takes, queen A4 is mate. So after queen to D7, white doesn't want to take this poison pawn. Instead they play rook to B1, defending A3 with the queen. Queen A4 was played by Leela, and now just queen B2. So this queen just defends everything. All these nice squares. Queen goes back to D7. And again, if bishop takes G5, actually black can take on F5. And after E takes F5, play rook takes G5. And actually this loses a piece for white. So white shouldn't be too ambitious. So Stockfish just plays rook H1 and doubles the rook on the H file. Leela plays queen to D8. And I feel like Stockfish is coming in now. They play rook H6. And they've got some control. King A7 from Leela. Bishop C1 defends the A3 pawn with the bishop, and now white can manoeuvre the queen around. Knight to A4 attacks the queen, but now just queen to C2 defends C3. Queen A5. So Leela is actually attacking the pawn twice, but they defend it with the rook. So Stockfish defends. And then bishop to E8 once again. Rook H7. Knight A to B6 and bishop D3. Again, a lot of manoeuvring. But here, bishop D7. And now it feels like Stockfish is winning. They have the opportunity here to play knight takes D6 and win a pawn. And it's not too bad after knight takes D6, rook takes, bishop takes G4 and rook C6. The pawn is now pinned by this rook, so it can't be taken. And the point is after bishop C8, they're going to play rook H7 from Stockfish and take this pawn on C5. And after queen A4, white can play D6. After a trade of queens and knight D7, rook D5, white has a lot of control of this position and should be winning. However, white does win a free pawn, but actually I think white gets into a better position in the game. Stockfish instead plays rook to F6. The point of this move is that I think white wants to create a battery on this 7th rank, and this feels like it's a stronger idea. Black played bishop to A4, attacking the queen moves, the knight went to D7, attacking the rook. The rook goes to F7, and white actually threatens to play rook takes D7 here and win 2 pieces for the rook. Rook D8 defends the knight, The bishop goes back to b1 for Stockfish. Rook to b6 attacks the queen, and the queen jumps into d2. Queen a6 attacks this pawn, but Stockfish defends with the bishop. The queen goes backwards and the bishop goes to b2. The rook goes to b3. But Stockfish's defence is immense here. They play bishop c2, attacking the rook. The rook has to go backwards and then queen to d1. So now the point is that Stockfish is attacking this bishop, and we've got a trade with bishop takes c2, queen takes c2, knight goes to b8. So this rook defends this pawn, but still Stockfish has got a much better position now. They play rook to f to g7, and they're going to pick up this pawn. Queen a6, Leela still attacks though, attacks this pawn, but knight to e3, and this is a great move because it defends this pawn and also defends this key f1 square. As we'll see, Leela plays rook f8. This knight covers the f1 square and also protects c4 at the same time. So now white is free to pick up this g5 pawn. Rook f3 from Leela. Queen e2 to defend the knight. And Leela just has to go for it now. She plays rook takes e3. Queen takes e3 is played, and queen takes c4. So they get a knight and a pawn for the rook. Will this be enough to save the game? Stockfish continues with rook to g7, again creating a battery against b7. The king goes to a8, and now rook to g8. So it looks as though maybe Stockfish is going to switch ideas and create a battery on the 8th rank, which would be even stronger. Rook takes b2 from Leela, king takes b2, and now knight to b6, and rook h8. And again, it looks as though Stockfish is going to win this knight now. I don't think knight to d7 here would save anything, because white will probably just start promoting this pawn up the board, and it's going to be very tricky for black to save this game. There's not even a perpetual check they can try. Maybe check here, but then king c2 and queen a4 maybe, king d2 takes. It doesn't like it's enough because then just g6, and the king will escape this way, away from the black queen. So in the game, Queen f1 was actually played by Leela, and now Stockfish took on b8 with check. The king went to a7, queen c1 just to defend the white king, because it's in a bit of trouble actually, or potential trouble. I think a human player would struggle here, but after knight c4 it looks quite scary. But Stockfish has it all figured out. There's king c2, check, king b1, black plays knight d2 check, king b2, and black plays b6. And now Stockfish is incredibly clever here. They set up a mating trap. They play rook b to d8. The point of rook b d8 is that the white wants to play rook to d7 check, followed by a4, and then rook to a8 will be checkmate. In the game, Leela played king a6, so this really helps white because now they can play a4. This cuts off a key square for black to retreat to. Leela plays knight c4 check, the king goes to a1, knight to d2, so black is threatening to play knight to b3 with check and fork the king and queen. However, it's too little too late. Rook d7 from Stockfish, this cuts off black, and after knight to b3 check, king b1, knight to d2. Black could have opted to take the queen here, but then we'll just follow rook to a8, which is checkmate. So after king to b1, knight to d2 was played by Leela, and white just took this off with queen takes d2, queen takes d2, and Stockfish played rook a8, which is checkmate. And it was a very long positional game for both sides. Ultimately, it looked as though white was actually slightly ahead all the way through the game, but eventually Stockfish managed to exploit black's weaknesses with these two rooks, and as we saw, managed to deliver a fascinating checkmate. As a human player, that was a really complicated game to look at. There were some subtle nuances there in the positional play, but I didn't want to get bogged down too much in the moves, because there were simply just too many of them. But I hope you enjoyed the analysis of this video. If you think I missed anything, please do comment, and please drop a like, comment or subscribe if you want to watch more videos in the future. It really helps the channel, and recommend it to your friends if they're interested in chess too. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.